Hello, everybody, and welcome to LinkedIn Live. This is Nihar Chaya, and I'm so happy to welcome my friend and special guest, Tricia Brouk, today to the show. Tricia, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Nihar, I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And to those of you that have not met Tricia before, I want to tell you she is has an amazing career. She's actually been a writer, director, producer, actor, performer, choreographer across the film, television, and theater stages in the entertainment industry. And she actually brings her wealth of experience in the performing arts to help people in all walks of life express their voice on the big stage and in front of various audiences. And today I wanted to talk to the viewers with Tricia and ask her lots of questions about her newest book called The Influential Voice. And I just picked it up last week. It's really incredible. I want to recommend it to everybody here watching. And yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit. Tricia, we got a chance to meet through the Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches community. And actually, as we got to know each other, one of the things that I really resonated with was your journey from the Midwest to New York City and how your passion for dance and the arts really led you to that. And also you talked a little bit about how you came into consciousness about your competencies and strengths and gifts. Can you talk a little bit about that with our viewers, about, a little about your journey and how you kind of came into focus with those things?
Absolutely, Nihar. I am from Arnold, Missouri, a small town. It was a small town then. And I grew up on a farm. Did not know that I would be pursuing a career in dance in New York City until I went to see my sister dance in a recital, and she was a pink poodle doing tap dance. And I realized in that moment, not that I wanted to be a tap dancer or a pink poodle, but that there was something more. And her being on a stage inspired me to think about what was possible as a 7-year-old, and that I knew that there was more for me. It wasn't just growing up on a farm with cows and shooting guns. And I realized, okay, there's a possibility out there for me as a dancer. Dance is a thing. You can actually be a professional dancer. And I had no idea that was possible until I started pursuing dance magazine, going to dance classes, looking into the world of dance. And I realized that there were dancers who literally pursued their dream. And in that moment, I became obsessed. I asked my mom if I could go to dance school. And luckily there was a mother and daughter who had a dance school in Arnold, Missouri. And I enrolled, became pretty much obsessed with ballet, and knew in that moment that I was going to move to New York City and dance with Baryshnikov. Now, this is where the unconscious competence comes in. I have had a very successful career. I was very determined, disciplined, and that's what dance does for you. But I didn't know why. And as a young girl, having pictures of Gelsey Kirkland and Baryshnikov on my posters of these amazing dancers on my wall, I didn't realize that I was literally calling that into my life, and that the universe heard me. I just wasn't specific enough, right? I didn't say when or what time or all of that. And when I was dancing in New York with Lucinda Child's dance company, and we collaborated with his company, and I did dance with them, that's when I realized, hey, I actually called this into my life when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And made this happen. And what I realized was when I moved to New York and pursued the career that I had in dance and danced all over the world at opera houses all over the globe and had an amazing, amazing life as a dancer, what I didn't realize is that I was unconsciously competent. And I kept saying to myself, I'm lucky. I'm so lucky that I got to do this. I'm so lucky that I got chosen for these dance companies. But what really, and I write about this in the book, what really happened is I started identifying truth versus lie. I worked really hard. I went to ballet class every single day. I went to bed really early. I did not have a massive social life. I determined how to stay healthy and to how to make sure that my body was an athletic machine. So there's nothing about that that's lucky. And when I started really understanding that I was unconsciously competent and move into being consciously competent, that's when everything changed. And that's when I really became more a curator of my own success. And that's what I write about in The Influential Voice. Many people are unaware that they have a voice. They're unaware of the reach they could potentially have by sharing their story. And when you become consciously competent of that power, of that leadership, of that storytelling, then you can literally change and even save someone's life.
Yeah, I love that story, and also just your view on why it's so important to express our voices. Like, it's not just about transcending our own lies or limiting beliefs, but it's also about not depriving the world of the impact that we could share.
Oh, yeah. Every human being has a story, and that unique story and your unique point of view is meant to be shared in order to serve someone. And there's 7.8 billion people on the planet. There's one person out there who absolutely needs to hear your story. And if you don't share it, you're literally preventing them from hearing from you. And that's the responsibility that I really believe comes with being an influential voice. And that's something that is really important to consider.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about some of the parts of the book, because I really enjoyed, just as a aspiring thought leader and a coach myself, just the idea of how to really tap into kind of your big idea, your big message for the audiences that you want to get in front of. And you started off, I think, talking about like really learning about your purpose and your values, and then moved into, I think, the idea of mining of your experiences. And can you talk a little bit about, just first of all, just the idea of purpose and values? Like, what are some ways that you advise people to really understand what those are for themselves?
That's such a great question. And I do think it's important to start with purpose, values, and mission before you begin to speak on big stages, or even if you're speaking across the table from your kids or your partner, or across the boardroom table from your colleagues. When you're clear on your purpose, why you get up every morning, and you understand what your personal values are, and it doesn't mean the values that you potentially brought in from your family. It's really the values that you care about right now. And you make the marriage of the purpose and values into your mission, which is the strategy to get where you want to go. Then you've created this compass. And anytime you speak about what you care about and what you find important, you will stay on track because you've got the compass of the purpose, the values, and the mission. And then once you're clear on that, and it's unique and special to everyone, then you can start mining for ideas. And this is something speakers come to me with questions all the time. I want to talk about my business. I want to talk about what I care about. I want to talk about how I serve. Yes, all of that is true. And if you break it down even further and think about what you care about and really start talking about what you care about as a human being, that will organically drive traffic to your business. And that's really the big mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs and speakers make, is that they think they just need to talk about their business. Well, if you talk about what you care about, which is most likely why you started your business, that alignment will happen organically, and you won't be selling. You'll be inspiring from the stage. And that's why it's really important to think about how to identify your big idea.
Yeah, you make a great point about, like, as an audience, we are more interested in kind of maybe the intention behind what you're doing and the why behind it. And it's not just hearing another pitch, but as a speaker, you're thinking, oh, I better get those things out there in the presentation. But otherwise, I didn't just do my job in marketing myself.
Right. It's if you're on stage, you can inspire the audience to take action. And whether that's buy your book, whether it's donate to a worthy cause, whether it's to think differently, your job as a speaker is to serve that audience. So it's really
Mhm.
about what do they need? What do you know they need? And how can you provide that for them so that they walk away feeling inspired and fulfilled by the time they gave you on that stage?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about something that I'm curious about personally, because when I talk to people like you who are in the arts and have put themselves out there every day, doing things that, like it's the typical adage that people are more afraid of public speaking than dying.
Yep.
It's like your whole career is really exposing yourself out there every day. And um, do you deal with stage fright? Do you deal with anxiety and butterflies and things like that?
For sure, butterflies are part of why you know you care. If you have butterflies, then and know how to shift that into excitement instead of anxiety,
Hmm.
then it's going to energize you. And I was one of those dancers that would be in the corner alone before the curtain would rise because I don't socialize, I can't talk small talk, I can't be distracted. I have to be fully focused and by myself because I had so many nerves.
Mm.
The thing about it, though, is that the more you do it, the more you go on stage and you can prove to yourself that you can coexist with those nerves and have an amazing performance and really serve the audience. That's the confidence, competence loop again that
Mm.
you're creating that A, I'm not going to die. B, if I fall, I can get back up because trust me, I have fallen a lot on stage, literally, not just figuratively. And what happens is you realize I can work with those nerves, I can coexist with the fear. And the message is so much bigger than me and my
Mm.
fear that going out on stage and remembering it's about your audience and how you can serve them will give you the strength that you need to coexist with that fear.
Yeah, that is such an interesting perspective because like if I think about, for instance, if I'm watching like those figure skaters in the Olympics and stuff, all it takes is one fall and that's all they talk about. They
I
don't
know.
talk about the actual performance, how amazing it was, up until that moment or how much they trained. And to be able to transcend that fear of what people are going to think just because of one thing, or nowadays it's like people control on social media and comment, and you know I think it's amazing just in terms of a life lesson to be able to get up and just be like, that's natural. That's going to happen in life.
Without question, falling is not failing. Falling
Mhm.
is an opportunity to improve. Falling is an opportunity to be relatable to people. We're all flawed human beings.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting you go out on stage and you do a pratfall and you trip on purpose for a laugh. What I am suggesting, though, is that giving yourself the opportunity to not care about what other people say or think
Hmm.
is really how you're going to be of greater service to everyone. Here's the thing. Yeah, there's 7.8 billion people out there, and there is one person who's meant to hear from you. There's also a lot of people who don't need to hear from you. And if they are on your channel or if they're in your trajectory and they don't want to hear from you and they tell you that, what a waste of energy. Thank them very much for their opinion and move on. There's no time for those who don't want to hear what you have to say. And there's so many who do, but it's really important that you get clear early on. If you're going to be an influential voice, you have to be prepared to not be liked. You have to be
Mm.
prepared to be given criticism and negative feedback. It's just part of the deal when you start putting yourself out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really encouraging. Like I think just those of us who are entrepreneurs and running businesses on our own, it's so easy to get caught up in the cycle of rejection and really worry about like that one person didn't like me or that one person is going to affect my reputation or my bottom line, whatever. But you make a great point that like not everybody, you don't want everybody.
Right.
It's like you want to be okay with the people that follow you. And it reminds me a lot about like Marshall Goldsmith talks a lot about the idea of like choosing your clients. Like you don't have to always be a coach for every client. You actually want to work with the clients that really want to work with you.
Yeah, for sure. And if we go back to what it was like being a dancer, Nihar, I heard no every day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Audition after audition, I would hear no. In directing, I would be working on a Broadway show and then the money would go away and it would just end. There was so much no. And I never thought of it as rejection. I thought of it as not yet. This
Yes.
no means not yet for something else. And I think if we can get used to those rejections, no's, as not yets, and really think of what a gift I'm being given right now. And I think I talk about this in the book. I was really, really hoping to dance with the Paul Taylor Dance Company. It was one of my dreams. And I got no more than once. Grateful and so thankful that they passed on me so that I could find another path. I love the company. I go see them every single year at City Center and at the Lincoln Center State Theater. I love, love, love the Paul Taylor Dance Company. And I'm so, so grateful that they said no to me multiple times because I'm here with you today. And this is the life I'm meant to be living.
Right, right. Yeah, it's so true, right? It's like if you can tap into gratitude for the things you didn't get and notice that there's some kind of hidden gift in that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's huge. Now, one thing that I want to talk to you about, Tricia, and by the way, let me also just give a shout out to some of the folks that are tuned in here. We have Hardip is from Toronto, Canada, is tuned in. We have Mukund Purnik from India dialed in. Those of you that have just joined, please feel free to type in any questions you might have for Tricia. Also, where you're tuning in from. And if you like what you're hearing, hit the like button and share it so some of your people in your community can also tune in as well. So Tricia, one of the things that actually I also am kind of in awe of you and your career is that you really chose a very subjective field to excel in. You know, it's in art and film, television, theater. It's so easy to like the art is in the eye of the beholder. So like you're auditioning constantly, right? And it's like you might never know. I see that a lot with my coaching clients. Like if I'm up for a chemistry meeting with certain clients, it's like they didn't choose me. It's like, well, why? Like, how do you know what the right thing to do is? And at the same time, if you try to over-engineer it, you lose a little bit of who you are, right? You're trying too hard to please somebody, which isn't really what we want to do as influential people.
Right.
And so you talk a little bit about the idea of comparing yourself with people and how that's a habit that you can break in the book. Because I imagine that comes up a lot, right? In any kind of subjective field, because you're up against some competition, but there's no real kind of rhyme or reason exactly why. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences there and your advice when you're advising speakers, for instance, or leaders dealing with that?
For sure. The fear and ego and comparison cocktail is very dangerous. And the reason why is because there's only one you. If we are teaching the same exact thing, it's going to be completely different because I'm going to be thinking about it through my point of view and you are going to be thinking about it through your point of view, Nihar. So when you start comparing yourself to others, what you're doing is preventing your authentic, influential voice from being heard. And so many speakers come to me and they say, I can't talk about this idea because, for example, vulnerability. I can't talk about vulnerability. Brene Brown has that cornered. Right. She absolutely does, without question. And I want you to think long and hard if you want to talk about something that somebody who is very well known already talks about. If your answer is yes, then talk about it because it's your point of view. It's your personal story. It's your life journey that is going to connect to the idea of vulnerability. And that unique life story is going to be different than Brene Brown's because you are different from Brene Brown. There are a million speaker coaches. Google it. There's a million. There's nobody who does it like me because I come from a point of view of a former dancer. So that's my athletic background, which means I'm going to make you memorize. I memorized every single step on stage. I didn't improvise. And I memorize every single line from a script. So I'm going to make you memorize. I'm also going to teach you the way I teach actors how to speak. So my point of view of how I show up in this process is going to be unique to me. You will have choreography and blocking when you work with me. And that is how it is different. Other speaker coaches who have equally as effective ways of teaching you to become an amazing public speaker, they're going to be unique to them. And that's why what you just shared is finding the finding the client who wants to work with you and being
Mm-hmm.
the coach for the perfect client. It is a very intimate exchange. When I work with speakers, it's very rarely about public speaking. It's more often about transformation. They come to me one way and they leave me another. And that's because they get super clear on the power of their voice. And once they have the tools and the techniques with which how to deliver that content and to deliver those words off of a page and onto a stage, they literally become the speaker they're meant to be in the world. And it's massively transformational and extremely fulfilling. I wake up every day in gratitude and so fulfilled with my purpose. I'm just so lucky every day.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And Tricia, you must have examples of people who just don't feel as comfortable with movement and things like that as you might be, being a dancer and a choreographer. I mean, but there's a lot of value to that, right? I mean, when you're let's say you're doing a TED talk and somebody's a little bit stiff, and I know that you have to kind of be in the circle and not move around too much, but I suppose you could do whatever you want.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about, well, I guess not thoughts, but like, how do you advise somebody who really doesn't feel as comfortable in their body because they're just so stuck in their mind about everything?
We will do physical exercises together. We will walk. We will get comfortable with what it means to stand still. We'll get comfortable with what it means to take 2 steps. And also part of the work with choreography and blocking is it's not random movement choices. It's directly related to the script and to the beat changes within a script. So if you're saying something and then you have a new thought, that's the perfect opportunity for you to move. If you are saying something that is incredibly impactful and you want the audience to really lean in, that's when you're going to be still. Mm-hmm. So choreography and blocking is directly related to the script for sure.
And one thing you talk about in the book also is, I don't know if this is necessarily the part of the mining, but it is really thinking about your big idea. And you talk about like, why is this important to me? Why is this important to the world, right? I think there's 3 steps. Why is this idea important? Why is this idea important to me? And then why is it important to the world? Can we walk our viewers through an example of like an idea, maybe an idea you had that you had in your career or in your recent work?
This is so great. This is called context. And when you apply context to your idea, to your blog post, to your Facebook Live, to anything that you are using to communicate, what happens is you give the idea global impact. And I love sharing this story because I was working with a speaker. She came to me and said, I want to do a TED Talk. And I was not yet the producer of TEDx Lincoln Square. And I said, let's do it. I'll start working with you and a stage will appear. And she said, I want to talk about rare eye disease. I have 3 children. 2 were born blind. And I started a retinal awareness foundation 16 years prior. And I want to talk about rare eye disease because it's important to me and my family. And I said, okay, great. Let's have an active listening session. I'm going to ask you tons of questions. And what I realized at the end of our active listening session is the idea wasn't global. So what we had to determine was the global impact of the idea. And after we went through this process, why is this idea important? To create awareness. Why is it important to Kristen? Because she has 2 blind children. Why is it important to the world? Is how you're going to create global impact. She learned to see the world through the eyes of her children. The reason it was important to ask, why is this idea important to the world, is because when I, who do not have children or blind children, think about this idea of how she sees the world through the eyes of her children, now all of a sudden I have empathy and compassion for seeing the world through anyone's eyes. That is why asking yourself these 3 questions is so important, because now the idea has global impact. I can listen to her TED Talk about her blind children, and I can apply the big idea, which is how to see the world through the eyes of someone else. Wow,
that is a great example. So it really helps you think about anything that's going on in your life can actually be relatable to anybody's life if you're able to think about the real idea behind that.
That's
and
right.
that's what you call context. That's fantastic. Um, and it's so great because like, uh, if I'm listening to that speaker speak, I'm already drawn to that story of what she's dealing with. But I am, in some ways, I am actually having an action item after I leave,
Yeah.
right? Because I can find something in my life that I can be more empathetic or something that I can relate to.
That's right. There's always a call to action from the stage, whether it's to get your audience to do something or to think differently or to potentially adopt your idea as their own. So when you take a stage and when you decide to be an influential voice, be intentional, be really clear on what it is you want from your audience and how you're going to get it. And I talk a little bit about this in the book as well. It's the technique of objective and action. And as human beings, we use objective and action, which is a David Mamet technique. I studied with the David Mamet Atlantic Theater School in New York City. And it's the technique that he teaches his actors, which is what do you want from your audience or your scene partner and how are you going to get it? And that means, for example, if you're a parent, what do you want? If you want your kids to go to sleep, that's your action. That's your objective. That's what you want. How do you get them to do it? Bribe, beg, storytell, scream. If you want your partner to take out the trash, that's your objective. How do you get them to do it? You could beg, you could nag, you could seduce, you could pay them. And that's the same thing from stage. If you want your audience to shake their head yes, because they're excited and they're in agreement with what you're saying and they're really receiving everything fully, how are you going to get them to shake their head yes? You're shaking your head yes.
Yeah.
You know how I got you to do it? I did it. And then I smiled.
Right.
So I shook my head and then I smiled at you, which made you feel comfortable to receive what I was giving.
Yes. What I love about this I think the service that you provide people is that you don't have to be an actor or in the entertainment industry to really benefit from this. And also, if you are someone who's a speaker, let's say you're an intellectual, academic kind of person, you may think that you've already provided something really amazing from the content, but there's so much more you could do with the presentation of it and and connecting with that audience.
For sure. I come from theater. If you are one of my speakers, whether it's in one of my shows that I produce, one of my speaking events, or the Big Talk Academy where it culminates in a showcase, if you tell me you can play the guitar or that you are a hip hop dancer or a break dancer, I am probably going to ask you to incorporate that in your speech.
Wow. Okay. And it must be a little bit scary when they hear that.
Oh, they're terrified. And then they get really excited. Mary Gaucher, who is a Grammy-nominated singer out of Nashville, she came to me and said, I want to do your TEDx Lincoln Square. And I said, what do you want to talk about? And then she shared it. And I said, only if you play your guitar and sing on stage. Wow. And she agreed to do that. And it's an amazing TED Talk. I also asked one of my speakers from Speakers Who Dare, midway, I had already hired her. I already curated the event. And then midway of working with her on the script, I came to realize she was a dancer. Midway. She didn't lead with that. So midway through the process of doing work with her, I said, can you dance while you say this talk? And she agreed to it.
Wow. Yeah. And it's like, I think it's probably one of those things where, you're a little bit, wow, I have a gulp in my throat for doing it. But then when you do it, you're so happy because again, it makes you unique and it really shows your kind of, like you said, conscious competencies and your gifts, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing as well. I want everyone to think bigger when it comes to what it means to speak and to be a public speaker and to be an influential voice. Being an influential voice does not mean that you have to have a book deal or be an award-winning anything or have a PhD or any of that. You can be an influential voice from a big stage and a small stage. You can be an influential voice and not say a thing. Dancers are influential voices because they are making the audience feel something with their movement. Teachers are influential voices because they're sharing what they know with a classroom of students. And that kind of legacy goes on forever. My dance teacher from when I was 7 is in my book. I talk about her. I sent her a copy. She shared it on social media. We're still very close. She had a massive influence on me. So when you're thinking about influence, whether it's from across the table from your kids, your partner, your family, or across the table from your colleagues, or from a massive stage in an arena, everything you say and do is going to influence and impact someone, which is why this comes with such a great responsibility.
Yeah, and we have one question from Chris on the line as well. How do you get people who have been speaking for years to break out of doing what they've always done?
This question is so fantastic. And I have a two-part answer. One, I love speakers who come to me who've never been on stage because they have zero bad habits. They're a blank canvas and they're so amazing. I also have speakers who come to me and think they know everything there is about speaking, and most of them know a lot about what it means to speak. What I will do with a seasoned speaker is just start peeling back the layers. They have a bag of tricks that they have been reaching into for sometimes 2 decades, and that bag of tricks is going to go out the window. And I talk about what it means to reach inside your bag of tricks. We all have one. It could be puffing ourselves up. It could be crying as an actor. Lots of tears happen when somebody wants to be seen as emotional. That's just reaching into your bag of tricks. That's not truth. You've seen Christopher Walken. I love Christopher Walken. I worked with him. We all see him reaching into his bag of tricks. He does pretty much everything the same way every time. That's the Christopher Walken bag of tricks that he's pulling out. If you want to really pull back the layers of what you know to be true as a speaker and go deeper and really start to become vulnerable and effective as a communicator in a whole different way, it means starting over. It means building back the layers from the very beginning and seeing what's possible. And that is terrifying. All of the speakers who've come to me who've had lots of training with excellent trainers, excellent coaches, like really 5-star coaches, they come to me because they want to start over. They've been putting on a show. They've been not really being authentic and truly vulnerable. And they come to me because they want to know how to be themselves while still being effective.
And do they potentially get typecast also in one place? So then they also want to kind of break out of what, the audience sees them as usually?
Typecast is a great way of saying it. Yes, they become thought of in one way, and then they realize it's not all of who I am. I'm multidimensional, and I want to break out of being thought of as this one type of person, thought leader, influencer, speaker. And that sometimes means completely shifting how you're perceived as a speaker and thinking about visibility and branding and all of that. But it's really also being able to let go of who you think you are supposed to be on that stage. And with the tools and the techniques that I teach, it's about being honest every single time, which is why you can't repeat yourself.
Right. Yeah.
We're not the same from day to day.
And the way you mentioned it earlier was like, it's really transformational. It's not just, let me get you on the stage, let me get you a TED talk or a certain engagement. I'm actually going to transform the way you even show up every day, or how you even look at bringing your voice every day in the world.
Right. And it also means removing that protective layer, that coating that we all have. And that, it doesn't mean not showing up prepared and performance ready, but it means being so clear with your technique and how to be on the stage. And that's the word, how to be on the stage. It is so about being in the moment, and memorizing gives you the freedom to be in the moment. And so many speakers, so many seasoned speakers will fight me on that. I'm not memorizing. I don't want to sound like I'm a robot. I'm not memorizing. The flow comes and I'm really good when I'm in the moment. That's probably true. And you're also preventing yourself from writing an incredible script and delivering every single word that's going to blow everyone away, and you're not going to forget or go off on a tangent.
That's really interesting advice, because I think a lot of times people will say, like, for a normal speech, it's like, oh, you should make sure you have bullet points and just talk through themes. But I think you're right. The TED format is one where you really have that 18-minute format, whatever it is, to really get exactly what you want to say out there. Why not memorize it? Why not just keep that in your back pocket, so then you can then be very comfortable up there?
Right. And I even think for a 45 to 60-minute keynote, there's sections from those longer talks that you want to memorize. And the reason you want to memorize them is so that you are in complete command of the material and you can captivate that audience. You want them in the palm of your hand the entire time. And if you walk out on that stage and you're hesitating, they will not be in the palm of your hand, because they can smell that.
Yeah. Well, Tricia, I know you probably have to get going. I don't want to keep it too long. One last question, I think, from Chris also, which I think is a good one. Excuse me. How do you think of the stage in this virtual world?
Such a great question. There is the same kind of performance quality required from a virtual stage that there is from a literal stage, from a live stage. And that's because showing up prepared, being articulate, understanding what you want to talk about, and seeing, even though you are in your own office and you're alone, most likely, it's seeing the people that you're talking to and really thinking about who you're connecting to. Do I think this is going away? Absolutely not. Are live events coming back? Yes, I have a live event happening in November. So I think it's really important to become comfortable with both and to constantly flex both muscles.
Wonderful. And I think there's a lot more that we could unpack there, but I know that it's already been a gift to have even a half hour of your time, Tricia. But thank you so much for joining me. I consider it a real privilege to have gotten to know you and become friends. And I want to encourage all of you out there to pick up Tricia's book, The Influential Voice. The website is right here where you can pick it up. Be sure to look out for her coaching and consulting if you're interested in doing a talk. She has the Big Talk Academy. Is there, and your website, if you want to just give us the link for your website?
Of course, you can find everything you need and all the support you need at triciabrouk.com.
Wonderful. And Tricia, we'll have you back, I'm sure, if you're up for it, because I love to keep talking about these topics. But thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Nihar. I appreciate you.
All right. Bye-bye.